Well, welcome everyone to this recording of the Technology Showcase, especially around critical power. It's so wonderful to have you joining us. I'm Stephen Warren, the CTO of DCD. Wonderful to have you with us again. So look, next up, we've got Erick Soares, who's the Senior Product Manager for UPS Renewables at C&D Technologies, and a very special guest speaker, Carrie Goetz, who's the Principal and CTO at Strategicom, and an Amazon best-selling author for a wonderful book, Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers, featuring careers for women, trades, and vets in tech and data centers. This entire industry is so happy to have Carrie join us, and what a wonderful and fantastic person. So let's get going here. This is really important. Get those questions in, because we're really going to be taking a look at how do we calculate and look at total cost of ownership in UPS systems and these renewables and ESG. There's so much going on here. So get those questions in, and we'll get to them right at the end. But right now, I've got to say, over to you, Erick and Carrie. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. I'm Carrie Goetz. We'll turn it over to Erick here in a second, but we're going to talk about some of the different decisions that happen and come about when you're thinking about batteries. So it's not just what is the battery, what's the technology. We have to look at the total cost of ownership, the environment that it's going to live in, and where it starts. So if we think about picking a battery technology, if you just look and say, okay, I'm going to evaluate this chemistry against the other chemistry, it's not always that simple. So we have to realize that not every application is created equal, where those batteries are going to sit are not the same, whether you're a brownfield and you're dealing with an existing battery room, if it's a greenfield and you have, all the decisions at your disposal, then we also need to think about what the weather's going to be like, what those outside external temperatures are going to be, what the battery room requirements are going to be for a location. Are we on the 17th floor? Are we on the first floor? Do we have specific code requirements that might change based on where we are? And then, pricing is definitely a piece of that equation, but there's some disruptors in the market that have really, really changed what those equations are. And PureMax is definitely one of those due to the longevity. And then we want to think about other things. We want to think how the battery systems live in the ecosystem. When do we change out our UPSs? If we're having down cycles, maybe it makes sense to do the battery updates at the same cycle, so we only have one set of downtime. And then we think about other things. What does our room layout look? Is this a new room or is this an existing room? And then figure out what your intentions are with these batteries. Are you going to be doing peak shedding? Are you going to be playing around with trying to make sure that your power quality is good? There's lots of different things that come into play when you look at batteries. So understanding the purpose of that battery room layout is also going to be a big factor. Now, if we look at this, there's always hype in the market. Whenever a new technology comes out, we see lots of hype about where things are going. But I think it's important to note that we're really looking at these battery technologies sticking around. And it's not just data center UPSs that are using these battery technologies. We have automobiles, we have golf carts, we have all kinds of other things using batteries. So when you see market slides and you see where predictions are, make sure that you understand what's going into those, right? If it looks like one battery technology is taking over all the other ones, make sure you know what market segment that's in before you make those decisions. And so traditionally, when we've made these decisions, we've gone to outside experts. We look at engineering firms, other people to tell us what's going in. And you have to realize that, one, they're going to, have the knowledge of whatever they've been exposed to. The other stuff they're going to have to do research on, and not everybody has time to do that on your behalf. So, it pays to do your own research. And then you also want to make sure that you understand the sphere of influence. Are they recommending this technology because they get a commission on this technology? Are they recommending this technology because, well, they've done it this way for 100 years, and if it's been done for 100 years, and it should be good for another 100 years? And always ask your vendors for alternatives. That's one of the things that whether you're looking at batteries or anything else, ask your vendors. It's their products. Ask them, is there a better way to do this? What is the savings? What is my growth plan? How am I going to make this work in my environment? Use their knowledge and brain trust. That's what they're there for. Every manufacturer pays these people to do exactly that on your behalf. And then figure out where the trends are. I will say, this is a very cyclical industry. It's also a very fickle industry. So it looks like things sway one way, and boy, they can swing hard back to the other side really, really fast. So as you look at all of this, you need to make sure you know whether it's hype, whether it's legitimate, and then start thinking about disruptors. What are some of the disruptors on the market? They're going to change the patterns in the way we do things. So if you're thinking about battery decisions right now, you really have to look at the technology, what you plan to do with that. And then now, because we have such a push on sustainability, we really need to think of the cradle to cradle. What's going to happen when you're done with that battery? How much of that can be recycled? Some of the longer standing battery technologies have much better life cycle management as far as reuse, making sure the lead happens. The lead gets reused in new batteries, different things like that. We're not quite there. We're still working on that from a lithium ion standpoint. But think about that. Think of how much we're going to have to buy new products versus how much we're going to be able to reuse existing products to make sure that we can keep that life cycle going. And then also think about insurance and code restrictions. What works in one location might not work at all in another location. If you're moving to a higher floor, for instance, some jurisdictions have restrictions on the type of technology you can use based on the environment. So don't just assume if you did it in one location, it's going to work in the other without. And then think about CapEx and OpEx and what those expenses are, because those are going to be different. How far do you have to transfer that battery to have it recycled? How far does that battery have to come to you? If you're looking at lead credits or any of that kind of stuff, there's advantages for having things that are sourced that you can get within 500 miles of your location, for instance. So think about those and think about it as part of the overall plan, because if you remember, the data center is an ecosystem. We live in that ecosystem. ESG plans are overall plans. They cover multiple assets. And it might be that part of your strategy gets completely undone by the wrong decision. So make sure you coordinate efforts with all of those. Think about your space limitations. Think about your replacement and your maintenance cycles. It's one thing to say that a battery lasts longer, but if you have to pull something down in the middle of a maintenance cycle, for instance, breakers on a UPS system, you pull them down about every 5 to 8 years to replace the breakers. Wouldn't it be nice to replace the batteries at the same time so you don't have an additional downtime 3 or 4 years past that to then change batteries out? So think about what those maintenance cycles are and what your energy savings is going to be, and what you can do with that technology. And then, of course, always safety is a big push. You need to make sure that whatever system you put in there is going to be safe for your environment. And again, when you start with these ESG targets and all your sustainability planning, there's a lot of different things that come into the battery conversation that might not come into conversations about other products. So make sure you see where you fit in that, because again, it's an entire site-wide plan when it comes to ESG, and you might have one part that undoes another part. So think about those transportation costs and where things go. And now I'm going to flip it over to Erick. Go for it.
Thank you, Carrie. And as you guys saw Carrie mentioning earlier, the traditional approach of looking at just price and a partner recommendation, it will never tell you the whole story. Total cost of ownership models, also known as TCO, are a great way to better understand all costs and fine-tuning for your specific application. Like we said earlier, one size, it does not fit all, is not always the best thing for you. The difference between both approaches is clear, as you can see on the additional categories that are often covered in a TCO model. These are all very impactful, and once they're properly evaluated, it will give you the confidence to make the right decision. Let's take a quick look at some examples of hidden costs that don't always come to mind in the traditional approach, but will have a big impact in your TCO results. First category we'll be looking at is initial install versus replacement, also known as CapEx versus OpEx. When looking at initial costs, the size of your system and the type of backup you require will be key factors to take into account. However, your choice of technology will perhaps be the most important one, as that choice will impact many other areas and could even determine additional requirements for code compliance, building infrastructure, and even insurance risks that will need to be assessed. Today, you can pick between well-established technologies like lead acid and newer ones like lithium ion and nickel zinc. Each one will have its pros and cons and many nuances that must be well understood before you make your choice. In terms of replacement, the life expectancy you choose will be the determining factor of how often you will need to replace your batteries. You have three key choices here. They are all very different, but also need to be very well understood. First one is design life, and that is the theoretical life of a battery under ideal circumstances. Think of it as the EPA estimated gas mileage on a car. Under those set of circumstances, the car will achieve that gas mileage. But we all know that real world will be different than what you have on a sticker. Same thing happens with batteries. That's where the term service life comes in, as it represents the expected life of a battery under real world circumstances. And finally, you have warranty, which is the amount of time that a manufacturer is willing to back its products up. In your opinion, in our opinion, warranty is not only the safest way, but also the fairest way to compare life in a TCO calculations, especially when you're evaluating different technologies. But beyond that, each time you replace a battery, as Carrie mentioned, you have to take into account additional labor, potential downtime for a backup system, and of course, the disposal of those batteries, regardless of which technology you choose. When we talk about maintenance, there will always be a trade-off between how often you service your system versus how much money you're willing to spend. Just like a car, the more you maintain it, the easier it is to ensure it is working properly, and the longer its life will be. However, that must be balanced with the costs associated with it and all the processes that are required to do it safely. Maintenance is usually charged on a flat fee per visit per string. So you can imagine the impact that your system size and technology choice will have on this cost. And speaking of technology choice, a very important topic to also keep in mind, as Carrie alluded to earlier on, is both the disposal of the batteries and the ESG aspect of these batteries. When new battery technologies such as pure lead max and lithium ion have an expected life of over 10 years, it wasn't too long ago that a UPS battery would barely even last 3 years. Now we're talking about 10 years and beyond. It's easy to forget, hey, I have to do something with these batteries when they get to the end of their life. Yeah, it might not be until 10 years' time, but it's still our responsibility to treat them properly. This process will have a huge impact in your costs, more importantly, in our environment. Lead acid is a highly recyclable technology, with around 98% of its components being recyclable. And it has a very well-established circular economy, which will pay you to properly dispose of used batteries. Despite all the benefits that newer technologies like lithium can give you, the recycling ecosystem is still severely underdeveloped, and it will cost you money to properly dispose of those batteries. To give an idea of the current order of magnitude between them, you can get paid around 35 cents a pound to recycle your lead acid batteries versus having to pay $2.25 a pound to recycle a lithium ion battery. The difference between these technologies also carries over in terms of CO2 emissions. Essentially, how many emissions are required to manufacture a battery? Single lead acid battery will, on average, take a third of the CO2 emissions that are required to manufacture a single lithium ion module. As I said in the beginning, every technology has its pros and cons, and they must all be weighted against your ESG goals to help you choose the best fit for you. Again, one size doesn't fit all. So after going through some of these categories, what would a TCO look like? For this example, we'll be looking at a 1 megawatt system with 5 minutes of backup at end of life. All options were properly sized using the same parameters to ensure a proper comparison. The lead acid category represents a standard VRLA battery with an assumed 3-year warranty, very common in the market, industry standard for a long time. And to provide that backup, you need 5 strings of a top terminal battery to be able to provide that. However, not all lead acid batteries are created equal. There are technologies like our newly launched Pure Lead Max that boast the safety, reliability, and recyclability of a lead acid battery, while also offering a standard warranty of 8 years, an expected service life of up to 10 years, and a lower recommended maintenance interval. For this example, we only needed 3 strings of the 1005 front terminal battery to achieve the required runtime. For lithium ion, we're assuming a standard 10-year warranty and a 5-cabinet system. At initial install, a lead acid system would typically be cheaper than a lithium, by taking advantage of bigger sizes available in front terminal, you can reduce your system size and your cost from the very beginning. For replacements, we chose to determine the replacement cycle based on the standard warranty for each technology. That puts the lead acid option at 4 replacements over an estimated life of 15 years for UPS systems, and both pure lead max and lithium at a single replacement over the life of that system. And as you can see for this example, by combining the benefits of the pure lead max technology with the complete analysis from a TCO model, again, looking at it from every single angle, every single aspect, a lead acid solution can now be a better choice than lithium ion. That may not have been the decision you would have gotten to if all you cared about at the beginning was price and recommendation. So again, it does pay off to go through this process, to ask these hard questions, because we'll say it again, one size doesn't fit all, which is why we encourage you to recreate this model based on your own unique situation. So to wrap it all up, we didn't want to leave you without anything to help you apply these concepts on your day-to-day. We have developed an Excel-based TCO tool that will help you create your very own TCO calculation, walking you through the same steps, just like we talked about. We also offered an in-depth training on Pure Lead Max that goes into details on what is behind this wonderful technology and how we can achieve these great results. Both are available to you as part of attending this webinar. All we ask is that you please follow the link you see on the screen, fill in the form, so get in touch with you. Make sure you buy Carrie's book. There's a lot of great information out there. Thank you guys so much for your time. Now back to you, Stephen.
Erick and Carrie, thank you so much. There's so much to get through, and there's a lot of questions coming in. And I've got to say, thank you very much, because hitting it with one size does not fit all is brilliant when we're talking about this ecosystem that Carrie spoke about, and you too, Erick. So let's get right to it. The first question that's come up again and again is, and this is about this confidence issue, because as Carrie stated, lots come into play here with so many variables to play with and with so much information out there. How do you know you're doing the right thing? I mean, how do you know that you're actually doing it right?
That's a very good question, Stephen. And as Carrie alluded to, you have to rely on your manufacturers and on your partners to provide you that information. But there's also an old saying called trust but verify. I believe in everything else but show me the data. It's the same way. Manufacturers and partners can provide a lot of very good input and insight, but you need to ask those tough questions. You need to ask the question, is there something better for me? What's in it for me? Is there another way, a better way to do it? And again, arm yourself with information from them and make sure that you are evaluating everything that's important for your specific application, everything that's going to be important for your company goals, to allow you to make the best decision for you, not just what somebody else believes should be the best decision.
Isn't it amazing? You spoke about that confidence in decision making is so critical, and that's why this Excel TCO calculator is so critical. I mean, so wonderful gift to the industry that's needed now. Second big question that's come up again and again is about lead acid's established here. You mentioned that lead acid is very well established technology, but it can also come across as very old or outdated. And I think the better question that they brought up is, what are your thoughts on that? Is it true? Do we need to be looking at it differently in this ecosystem that Carrie spoke about that has so much impact?
It is true that the lead acid technology is very well established, and that's also one of its strengths. It's proven that it works, and it works well. However, lead acid manufacturers are not just sitting back and waiting for something magical to happen. We're looking at every aspect of the battery to see how can we make it better? How can we improve a little bit further? As we said, it wasn't 5 or 10 years ago that the normal life expectancy for a UPS battery was 3 years. Now we're talking about 10. Maybe in 5 years from now, we'll be able to get to one that's 15. So this is a very well-established technology. There's still a lot of room to continue to improve and advance it by looking at all the aspects of the battery, providing a complete solution. That's actually what we're able to achieve with the Pure Lead Max, and why we're also offering this training for everyone is don't just trust the numbers. Ask us. Ask us the hard questions. How can you back this up? How did you achieve this? And by the end of the training, I'm sure everyone will be confident and really understand how we're able to make the claims that we're making and why this product is truly groundbreaking within the UPS lead acid business.
Groundbreaking, and also wonderful to have a fantastic partners join with you to actually help. Okay, big question that's come up, and I'm going to try and get this right because it deals with not only the ESG and the sustainability planning, and there's so much going on here. I mean, we're dealing with scope 1, 2, 3, but how do you believe each technology type will fit into ESG? I mean, we even heard about this, the hidden costs and ecosystem. How do you deal with it?
So I would say this, ESG targets, because they're based on the entire ecosystem, are going to be evolving. We don't know today what tomorrow's ESG targets are. We don't know what 5 years from now those targets are, how they're going to be applied for carbon credits, carbon tax. We don't really know. That's evolving. So I think what you have to do when you're balancing your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions being yours directly, yours indirectly in your supply chain, you really have to start paying attention to your vendors, what they're doing for technology. And it may be that, you know, you get a benefit today, but 3 years from now, they say, okay, well, here, now we've decided that you're going to get extra points if 90% of that technology comes from something that's recycled. Well, that can sway the needle pretty greatly, right? So I think that as you get into these plannings, if you are working with ESG in your enterprise, you need to get with your sustainability people and marry them up with your manufacturers to figure out how things are working and how you can mesh those together so you get the right bang for your buck. And like I said, it may be that one technology is really good for a part of your ESG plan, but horrible for the other one. So in a cradle to cradle scenario, how much of that can actually be reused versus how much of that is recycled and discarded? And all of these processes are also changing at the same time. So when you put all those together, I guess the best thing to do is to say that this is an evolving science and it's an evolving industry. Calculations evolve, regulations evolve. So just keep a good mindset on any of the technologies that you're using that could have an environmental impact and make sure that they fit in with your plans, but make sure that you've got the right answers going in and that you're not just, you know, throwing something in a gut reaction because, well, the first article I read when I did a web search or something along that, and it happens. So, you know, you just have to be able to make those informed decisions, I think. And if you don't know enough, there's calculators, you know, reach out to the vendors. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and reach out to people like yourself who've got that experience and insight and expertise because it's absolutely wonderful. I've got to say, thanks to both of you, Erick and Carrie, absolutely wonderful. I mean, to really help the industry at this point in time with everything we're doing. And even I'm going to reiterate what Erick just said, buy Carrie's book. This is wonderful. I mean, we all need this right now. Thank you so much. And that brings us actually to the end of this tech showcase for today. Thanks for everyone joining in and getting those questions. Don't forget, get to that website, get inside there, join it, get the information that you need. And for those of you who missed anything, please remember everything's on demand. So remember, we'll be back tomorrow. And thanks so much for joining us. To Erick and Carrie, thank you so much.
Thanks. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Stephen. It was our pleasure.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Tech Showcase for today. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. And of course, thanks to our fantastic speakers and our sponsors. Look, if you did miss anything, no problem. You can always review everything on demand, pass it along to your colleagues. Everyone needs to learn. So we'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time with a fantastic panel on emission-free backup. So we'll be looking forward to those. Join us. We've also got that next episode, The Path to Reliable, Emission-Free. Join us then. We look forward to seeing you, and thanks so much for joining us at this time.